Well, reactive abuse. It's when someone behaves pretty much any way they like. Then, when the other person reacts, they claim that they are the innocent victim and they are being abused. I illustrate it like this, okay? You get person A, person B. Person A lifts a stick and just starts poking person B. Person B says, stop that. Stop what? Stop poking me with that stick. What stick? That stick there, you're poking me, it's really annoying. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. It's really annoying. Stop it. And sooner or later, person B, they grab that stick, break it in two, throw it to the floor and just scream, stop poking me with that damn stick. Person A starts saying, does everyone see that temper? Does everyone hear what I have to put up with? I'm always on eggshells around that person. They broke my favourite stick. The reaction has been focused on, not what caused it. The reaction has been focused on, not what caused it.
Oh my goodness. Good job, Darren McGee. The person who has been on the receiving end of this over time, over and over and over and over, if somebody's listening and they've been experiencing this, they're saying, yes, I know exactly what you're saying when I keep saying over and over and over and over again. There's like this reverse victim, narcissistic attacks. The victims are absolutely at their end. You react in a way that feels so different than you know that you would normally react to anybody, anytime. This isn't me. This isn't how I react in life. What just happened? Who am I anymore? The narcissistic or the gaslighting person points the finger and says, look, they're the crazy one. Look, they're the one who's causing all the abuse. Do you see it? I mean, can you see it?
This gentle Irish therapist just dismantled what might be the most challenging problem a couple can face: reactive abuse. What makes this problem so damaging for couples is the confusion. How can someone go through so much abuse in a relationship and be made to feel like the abuser? There is hope for couples to get to the other side of it. The change, real change, can't happen without support. These are the Crafts, James and Teri. They don't know how the internet works, anything about YouTube, TikTok, or social media. And that's okay, because they know a bit about something else: marriage. In fact, they've helped some of the most influential couples in the world, and they've also helped couples going through the hardest situations imaginable. The reason why James and Teri are able to help couples go through really hard things is because they've been through it themselves, and they came through the other side. Marriage Health with James and Teri Kraft.
When you guys are working with couples, how often is there two victims in the room? And there's confusion because there's two people who have suffered abuse, but one of them was reactive abuse.
A lot. How many times have we found ourselves faced with a couple where there is abuse being projected out to their spouse, and the other spouse takes it, stuffs it, and then finally comes back out with an aggression of some kind? It happens a lot. And people then manipulate, saying that they're actually have an abusive spouse while they're the abuser. This their spouse is actually finally reacting to the abuse or the trauma.
Like how this Men Project says, although it's called reactive abuse, they prefer the term reactive defense because a victim is not the abuser. The reaction comes out of someone's sustained emotional, relational, sometimes even physical abuse that has been consistent over time.
In toxic relationships like that, what often happens is person B ends up apologizing. Now, if you think about it, they're actually apologizing pretty much for how they feel about the way they're being treated. Person A, the abuser, learns what they can get away with. Sometimes they will lift another stick and start poking again. This time, as they're poking, they're making eye contact and they're grinning as they poke. It is a form of gaslighting, blame shifting, victim shaming. Over time, the victim may fear asserting any kind of boundary for fear of being accused of being abusive, while the abuser learns that they can pretty much get away with anything. The victim may become terrified to assert themselves at all, in any way at all, always doubting themselves, again, fearing perhaps the abuser telling others about their reactions. The abuser seems to get away with everything. Everyone else seems to believe them. Remember, it is a reaction, they're looking for in a lot of cases like that.
When you see that kind of behavior in a relationship, especially in a marriage relationship, person A who starts the aggression, abuse towards person B, as he's describing it, it's amazing how there is an underlying intention to get a rise or reaction from person B.
Remember, it is a reaction they're looking for in a lot of cases like that.
How many times, even if it's subconscious, that they want to get a reaction because then they can project or deflect onto person B, their spouse, so they don't have to take responsibility for their own behavior. Let me just tell you, it's so backwards, but it happens all the time, because what happens is that person A, who is the abuser, the aggressor, this person wants person B, the spouse, to take responsibility for the dysfunction in their relationship. It's a vicious cycle. And then person B reacts, becomes aggressive, but ultimately feels this great shame. I've sat with couples so many times where they do this same situation. I just sat down today. I'm talking about this, but that person B who was being poked with the stick finally breaks the stick. Then there's a great shame that comes over them. Like, I'm actually bad. I feel horrible for what I've done. Because it's not in their nature, it's not their personality that they are doing this. They've been pushing off for so long, but now they become the abuser.
Maybe the hardest thing about experiencing this cycle in your relationship, worse than the confusion, worse than the pain from enduring the abuse, is the fact that you often lose yourself. You see yourself from years ago and say, where did that person go? How did I get here? And who am I now? You can probably think back to a version of yourself that wasn't filled with aggression or depression and wonder, what happened to me? Where did that person go?
When we're talking about reactive abuse, or I like the term reactive defense, at the end of the day, I'm really compassionate with clients that come in and who are saying like, I don't even know who I am anymore because I just keep losing it. And it's like torture. There's been consistent narcissistic gaslighting, abuse, there's just a lot of covert, manipulative, under the surface, emotional and relational trauma that's happening inside the relationship. And the client that I'm working with is saying, it's like, I can't control myself. I'm so abused. I'm so traumatized that, I just emotionally dysregulate. I just lose it because I can't handle this anymore. But what I often will just ponder, and I'll just take a deep breath and go, okay, what does the most authentic and genuine expression of who you are, what does that feel like? And oftentimes they'll say, well, yeah, I'm not an unhinged person. I'm actually pretty chill. Or yeah, I might be passionate, but I'm not like completely emotionally dysregulated. I'm not like freaking out all the time. And I'm like, okay, that's good. So how does it feel in your body when you are your most genuine and authentic, chill, whatever, much more regulated person? What does it feel like in your body? And it's like, oh, I feel calm. I feel peace. I feel connective. I feel open, I feel curious, and it's like, okay, great, because that's where you want to live, right? That's where you want to be most of the time. So basically what I'll do is I'll stop them right there and just say, so that's our goal. That's our goal. Whether you are alone or you're in a relationship, you want to feel and show up in a way that feels most genuine, authentic, curious, and open, or whatever that might be. So if you're in a relationship that is repeatedly bringing you to the brink of emotional reaction to the point where you don't even feel yourself, we need to make some choices. We need to do some work. We need to lay some groundwork so that you can feel like you can be authentic and genuine and feel the most alive, the most regulated. And if that means that we have to come to terms with the reality of what this relationship is, maybe this person is abusing you, and maybe we do need to have certain boundaries, or we have to exit if that person is unsafe so that we can live that way.
Remember, no form of abuse is acceptable. Some people may react to being provoked very aggressively, some even violently. Some may be just sarcastic or even try to reason with the abuser, just leave the situation. Regardless of the reaction or response, everybody is responsible for their own behavior, even when provoked.
We have to realize that what he's saying with everybody's responsible for their own behavior, he's right on. Because at the end of the day, if I'm in a relationship and it continues to be abusive over and over and over again, and I don't do some of that work in my own life, or I don't get support and put in the boundaries or whatever that might look like for it to become safe so that I can be living the way that my person is, my personality, and I'm being driven to the brink of absolute chaos all the time, then I am responsible for that part. So what he's saying is totally right on. You are responsible for living in a place that feels like, I can be me in this relationship. Again, I go back to, how do you want to show up in the world? And oftentimes someone will say, not like this. And then that's where we have to back up from it and go, okay, well, if they're not going to take responsibility for their behavior, are you going to continue to take responsibility for their behavior? Oftentimes when we're in a relationship and it's just crazy like this, we start to become the manager of all of the reaction and we sort of hold all of it. It's like, okay, I don't want the retribution or the punishment that I'm going to get from this kind of behavior, because maybe it could be financial, it could be emotional or physical retribution if I stand up and say something. So I'll just go ahead and manage all of it and I'll just hold it all and make it all okay. But what that does at the end of the day is it just stuffs it down and stuffs it down and stuffs it down. My partner might realize that, great, they'll go ahead and hold all the responsibility. I can lay my head down on a pillow and go to sleep and be just fine, because they're the ones who are crazy, and they're the ones who are able to hold all this because it's their fault in the first place.
What would happen if we were able to be aware of this cycle? Because it's a cycle. I can guarantee you, if it's happened once, that is not the first time. It's been happening for some time. A pattern that has been taking place. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years. You've been biting your tongue, not wanting to fight back because it's not who you are. It's not what you want in life. And you've been poked at so many times. And eventually you just blow up and you explode backwards with this aggression towards your spouse. Afterwards, it feels really good to finally have a voice and be able to say, stop. And it's like punching a bully in the nose. There's 2 points of shame that you are going to experience in this. Number one, the shame that's being projected on you from your spouse, saying you're the abuser. See, they're going to make you feel like, oh, see, you're bad. See, you're the reason our marriage is going to hell in a handbasket. And so you feel that shame from them direct. It's directed at you. There's a second part of that shame that's internal in your own mind. Because you vowed that you wouldn't do the same thing that your spouse is doing to you. You vowed you don't want to be like that, but then all of a sudden you reacted like them. And so there's a shame inside of you, and an internal shame that is even sometimes worse than the gaslighting shame that's coming your way on the outside. This is a horrible place to find yourself, because all of a sudden you feel hopeless, even depressed, disappointed with yourself because of your action. And I just want to speak to that because I think it's important for us to have a reality check around that. You're not bad. You're not bad. Did you do something that you regretted doing? Yeah, and we all do those things, especially when a bully keeps punching you and pushing you and poking you and wants to hurt you and wants you to rise out of you. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. But you're not bad. I want to speak grace over you right now because, yeah, you might have reacted back. You might have been aggressive back, but you're not an aggressor, especially if you've been holding back and you've been trying to do what's right. You're not an aggressor. Aggression coming back is your self-preservation mode, where you're self-preserving. How do I protect myself? Because I'm tired of being hurt over and over and over again. This is where you need help. You need help where others can come in. Professionals can come in and help pinpoint these areas and bring awareness around that so that you're not walking there alone. Because many times you find yourself very alone. So the shame is coming from your spouse saying, see, they're the aggressor. And then shame on the inside saying to yourself, I thought I would never become like this. I thought I would never do such a thing. And now I find myself in this position. You're not bad. And 2, you can get help. You can't do this alone. You can have someone help you walk through this. It's not going to be your spouse at this time. No, my prayer is someday he can or she can meet you there. But you know what? You need to have someone come alongside you, speak life into you, but also to give you the tools to how do you deal with this kind of situation and this current relationship, because you can't keep living this way. You can't keep working through and being poked at and poked at and poked at, hoping that you'll never react or be aggressive back. You can't do that. That's wishful thinking. You need help that you can actually walk through this and be able to navigate healing steps so that you can be the healthy you. And prayerfully, the two of you can become the healthy two of you.
So regardless of the reaction, regardless of the response, the victim is going to be blamed and shamed anyway. But I tend to look at it like this. Whenever you react, they have control. Whenever you respond, you have control. Now, there are different ways of handling this. In, say, a work situation, it's different. There's human resources, there's the managers, there's guidance and support, codes of conduct and so on. In a relationship with a toxic person, there isn't that same level of support, but there is support. Sometimes you just need to tap into it.
And that's where I often will sit with an individual and just be like, tell me about life when you're not with them. Tell me about life, your most perfect day, or when you are at your best, or when you are in that most joyous, happy place, or what was life like maybe before you were in this relationship. Describe to me what that genuine, authentic place looks like. And they'll often be able to describe that. And it's like, okay, so then describe to me what it's like when you're in the middle of this sort of like continued trauma and tormenting. And then it's almost as if there's these two separate scenarios that are happening. Like, oh, you're right. There is an actual absolute difference in the way that I relate to the world everywhere else than when I'm with this person. And then we have to start looking at, okay, what is it that we need to do here to live in a way that you feel safe? Do we need to have this person understand what they're doing? And can they understand that? Do they have the capacity to understand that? So let's get some support. Let's maybe get into a process individually, and then maybe eventually together where there's some accountability around that. So often couples will say, well, this is what's happening at home and this is what I'm experiencing. And what I will often say is I need to be able to see this in action. Like I need to be able to bring that somewhat into the room because I know how to deal with that. I can kind of bring that out a little bit and I can observe it. And then it's like, hey, did you just notice that? Did you just notice how you responded to that person when they expressed that they had a need? And you just minimized that, or you made them feel stupid, or you shamed them or hurt them. And you just did that 3 times in the last 10 minutes. Did you notice that? Oh, I didn't notice that. No, I'm not, that they just make me do it. They make me do it. Oh, really? Okay. Right. So then there starts to be accountability around that. It's like all of a sudden the person in the victimization chair, or the person who's being sort of like traumatized, they're sitting there and like, oh my gosh, this is the first time in my life that I've ever had somebody outside of the two of us observe that and call it out. And it all of a sudden feels as if you're not alone. And so that's why it's really, really good to call in some support for this, for people who are trained and know how to handle it and deal with it. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to change if they feel like they're in control, right? And so that person's just going to keep going. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, I'm being called out on that. And then I'll be able to say to them, do you want to change? Do you want to act differently toward your spouse? Do you want to hold space for their feelings and needs? And if they're like, no, I don't care about their feelings and needs, and I'm going to continue to do it, then that right there defines their ultimate goal in the relationship. And it's like, okay, well, then there's the reality that we have to deal with. And at that point, sometimes we have to make some really hard decisions on what that looks like moving forward.
What happens a lot of times is that we'll sit down with a couple, and I'll just say that maybe person A is the husband and person B is the wife. I'm just going to use that as an illustration because it can go both ways. And the husband has been poking, prodding, abusing his wife. And we sit down with them and they tell us these stories. And typically the husband will be a master manipulator. And so they'll paint the picture as they are the victims. This is a real issue that we face. And so a lot of times we have to probe a little bit to get the real picture. Because a lot of times when there's an abuser, someone who is abusing their spouse, they are wonderful, incredible at painting the picture that benefits them. Because think about this, they're trying to create a scenario that will justify their means. Bottom line, I'm going to shoot straight with you. They're trying to build a scenario that will help justify their means. So the bottom line is we have to pull it apart and get to the source of this and see the reality at hand. and then address the issue at hand and say, wait a second, can we observe and see the situation with clarity? That there is abuse taking place within this relationship. And now we have created an environment where there is a mutuality. We look at couples and I ask this question, has it always been like this? Has it always been like this? And the spouse who's abusing the other spouse, they'll say, no, we used to be, my wife was so kind and loving and open, and they were always so caring to me. I'm like, well, what changed? She just became so hard and angry. And I'm thinking, well, why did she become so hard and angry? Can you see maybe observe why she became, and she did change? That something was breaking down here, that she couldn't sustain that any longer, or he couldn't sustain this any longer. And so they started to preserve themselves, protect themselves, and not open themselves to you. The reason there's a hardness and a change that takes place in that relationship, because they're starting to protect themselves, put a guard around their heart because they're tired of being hurt. And so when they react like that, the abuser says, see, look, they've changed so much. They're not the same person anymore. And it gives them justification to say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm going to walk away from the marriage. Rather than stepping back and getting back to the origin of it and saying, hey, is there something that has started to chip away at the innocence of this person? And I know not everybody's innocent, but if there's been that radical of a change, there's something that's been chipping away at the relationship and taking away the innocence of this purity and this love for one another. And we have to be aware of that rather than just be blind and naive and then walk away. Wow. If we walk away because of our misconceptions of reality, God, we miss out on the potential within a marriage.
So at the end of the day, there has to be a point where the person who's being victimized by all of this, there has to be a point where enough responsibility is being taken, but not for the crazy making, but there has to be responsibility for the choice and the power with which we have been given to choose whether or not we're going to be a part of that anymore, or to what degree we're going to be a part of that. And so if we lose the part where we feel like we have power over our own life to make good and healthy choices and live good and healthy lives, that's going to lead to more feelings of helplessness, more feelings of powerlessness, more reaction.
You're not alone. You're not alone. Here at Marriage Health, we want you to reach out to us because we want to come alongside of you, ourselves, Teri and I, or other coaches that we have, and come alongside and meet you there and help you learn how to walk through that so that you can become a stronger you and your husband or wife can be a stronger couple moving forward together in this world.
Marriage Health with James and Teri Craft. If you feel like you need someone to come alongside you, a coach or a counselor, reach out to us. The link is in the description.